All right, I was doing this before and now I don't remember how to request.
Oh, let's see.
So we typically use Zoom. I did some testing with Teams before, but I thought you had to make me an organizer to make me, or
No,
make me promote me or whatever to be able to get me to show it, but I don't remember. Because I don't see that I've got, oh, there's share.
got it?
God almighty. This is going to be a long demo. Sorry, Vince.
Hey, Brian, this is Colby. I jumped on. I don't know if you heard me. So.
Oh, hey, Kobe. I did see you.
Hey, Colby.
Cool. Hey, how you doing, Vince?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing good.
Great. All right.
Didn't mean to interrupt, Stacy. I'll shut up again.
Oh, you're fine. You're absolutely fine. All right, so I'm going to jump in at sales order entry, which, as you know, that's where you do any quotes in order. And one of the things that we didn't cover when we talked last time is how you guys create your quotes. How do you come up with the $95,000 that you charge for the machine?
Yeah. So in the background, we have a salesman who's creating a proposal. That proposal through the review process with the customer gets finalized, and then they send us a formal purchase order, where essentially at this point that becomes our contract, and currently we don't even send them a responding formal sales order. So this will be new to us, and so taking a step back, we track the projects in Microsoft Access, and that's what I consider our current database of sales orders, but we don't formally hold them within Sage right now.
Do you guys actually quote it out before you get the purchase order, or is it something we want this machine, we work back and forth to figure out what needs to be part of it, and then we just give you a purchase order and we never really discuss whether or not it's really, because in a lot of companies they'll quote something out and it's a kind of a, well, sometimes they take it, sometimes they don't type thing.
Yep. So like the proposal process, that goes out to the prospective customer, and that inside of it has the entire equipment quote plus any additional spare parts or installation costs associated with it.
And how do they determine what that quote dollar amount is?
It's listed inside of the proposal. It's broken down.
So do they do a cost roll-up of what it's going to cost you guys to make it to come up with that number? Do you guys want to do that in Sage, or are you going to keep it outside at this point?
So I would love to be able to put our budgeted cost inside of Sage. It's obvious, it's not critical right off the bat, but it's definitely something that I want to be able to input, and then using job cost profitability, be able to compare realized versus estimated.
Yep. Okay. The reason that I'm asking all these questions is because within sales order entry, I can grab the next order number and I can do this as a quote or an order.
Okay.
And what I'll do is I'll pull it in as a quote at this point. And your flow is going to work slightly differently because your machines are so customized.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab our More Noodles company, and the quote expiration date will automatically come in based on the way you have it set up. When you go to the lines, you can tell it what you want to quote. And I put in, oops, if I could type, I put the auto sleever in there because that's the data that you gave me.
Yes.
So a quantity of 1, it's going to tell us we don't have it. And again, this is another setup thing that if you don't want to see this, you don't have to. You can just skip it.
Okay.
We wanted to do a work ticket for it.
Yep.
So we're clicking off the work ticket box. When I leave that line, it's going to ask me how I want to create this work ticket. And this is where, depending on what you guys, what information is coming from where,
Mhm.
how you guys are going to want to pull this information in.
Okay.
You can create a template that has all the process steps that it goes through and parts associated with it if they're common parts. If it's all if the parts are all completely unique, you can just pull it in with a template of steps
Okay.
and then import the parts directly into the work ticket.
Okay. Can I just ask a couple questions? So
Please do.
I see work ticket checked off. PT, what's that?
PT is if you want to print it out on the sales order, and that'll come more into
Okay.
effect when we start seeing the billable lines for those milestone payments.
Yes.
And
yes.
CG is if you want to charge for it.
I see. Okay. Okay.
And the way I've got it set up, more than likely, and this is defaulting in a unit price based on the way I set it up in inventory, but more than likely you're going to have a $0 price here.
You're saying that because everything below it will make up the true price.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it depends on where you're doing this. If you're doing it during the sales order entry process, or if you're doing it during the quote process.
Oh, okay. Yes, makes sense.
Because if you're doing it during the quote process, you may, or I mean, do you determine those progress payments or milestone payments at the time of quote?
The payments are basically always the same timing. It's basically 90% of the time it's 50, 40, 10. 50 is the initial down payment. As soon as the purchase order is signed and we can get the first bill out, that's the initial AR, then deposit. Then the second one would be FAT, which is factory acceptance test, which happens at our site, and then the 10% is site acceptance, which basically gets billed out a month after we install it, and then there are no issues.
Okay. Because what you can do is you can have those billable lines for those different percentages.
Yes, yes.
On here, and those can have the revenue associated with them, so that when you release them, you say, okay, I'm billing this now, I'm billing this now, I'm billing this now. But then the total adds up to what you sold the machine for.
Right. Okay. So I don't want to get this very confusing, but this is kind of like, so you're essentially like rigging it to show the payments, right? Now, when I spoke to Colby, one of the other add-ons was having that multiple deposit functionality. And essentially, if you're doing it the way you set it up, then you don't have to have the multiple deposit layout, right?
Correct.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Yep. And so we can quick go through this. I pulled everything into a template with the parts and everything on it, which you guys probably wouldn't have the parts on it. This would probably just be the process steps that you need to go through, and then you'd import in the parts that you need for this machine this time through. And
Yeah.
you can export out, you can get those exported out of CAD and imported into here.
Okay. Yeah. It would basically be an import off my BOM.
Right, right. And I've got the billable lines as chargeable, so I'm gonna go ahead and let that go through.
Okay.
And I'm gonna say no just for a minute so that we can see the way it comes in. When it comes in, it's gonna have those 4 billable lines for, and I set it up 30, 30, 30, 10.
Wow, yeah, cool.
So when you are entering this, like I said, this would have been 0. And then So you'd have that as a zero price, and then it would be 28.5. Get an arrow, not a 28.5. Oops. Ay. 9,500. So then you'd get your total amount of the 9,500 for what you're doing, but it would show your different billable lines then.
Right.
The 30, 30, 30. But then the actual description of what you're making is going to be in the work ticket. So when you go into the work ticket, what it's going to do is it's going to show you your process steps and the way I set it up. And this can be done differently depending on how you wanted to do it. But the way we've done it for other people is we actually have an activity for billing those down payments so that until it's marked as complete, you don't move on to the next step.
Okay.
So then you can hold it in billing and release it once, mark it as complete so it can go on to its next step when you receive payment or however you want that to trigger.
Okay.
So I just set up different billings as part of my different steps, but then I've got my design step, my manufacturing step, electrical and test, etc. And each of those are going to have a bunch of different things associated with it depending on how you're doing this. Because of the way I set it up, I put all my parts in it.
Yeah.
If we go back to, we can do it from here. There's also this import parts. And what you can do is you can have a file, a comma delimited text file, and you can grab those parts. And when you say okay, it's going to go ahead and import those parts that you need on that work ticket. These parts need to be parts that are real parts in your inventory to be able to make that happen, or you need to import them in as a miscellaneous or special part.
I see.
But you can just go ahead and import them all in instead of having them in that template.
Okay.
But I'm going to go ahead and delete those off. No. So I don't double count everything. All right, so we've got all our, yes, I want to save those changes. Okay, go ahead. All right, so we've got all our different parts that were on your spreadsheet. Some of them I set up as we're buying them directly to the job because it's something that we don't typically keep in stock or it's something unique to this job.
Okay.
And what this will do when you check off this box, it will link a PO directly to this work ticket when the PO is created so that this is being bought directly to the PO. That way the dollars that are on that PO line will go directly into WIP for this job when you do the PO receipt process.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And again, PT is if we wanted to take one of these items, like if we go back to the other step, PT is if we want to print it out separately on that sales order.
Right.
CG is if we were going to charge for it separately. So if there's items that are very unique to this that you want to show on the sales order or on the quote, you can check off the PT and it'll show on there. And then if you want to charge it, you can do the CG box.
Okay.
Which just gives you a little bit more flexibility in the way this all works.
Yeah, fantastic.
So I mark some of them that I want to do them for link the purchase orders directly to it. If we highlight any of them, we're going to immediately be able to see what we currently have in stock. So even though I'm saying that I want to purchase this directly, if I have some in stock, I can take that off and it won't show up in my purchasing list to purchase it because I can see that I've got enough right now and I'd rather use what I have on hand. Maybe, maybe not. But you have the option. if you have different drawings or procedures or any of that kind of stuff that you want to associate with this step in the process, you can go out to the attachments. Within the attachments, it's going to be a link, a dedicated location out on your network. Well, once you have that, I have anything that's a Word doc here, versions, text docs. So you can add a description as what it is, as far as what it is. You can categorize what it is. And when you say, okay, it's going to user stamp it and date stamp it for who put it out there. And then from that point forward, anybody can come to this and click on the button and see whatever it is the document is. And it can be anything that you can read on the computer. So if you have a CAD viewer, it can be CAD drawings. If you have Adobe, you can, any Adobe documents, etc. So you can see anything that is associated with it. And obviously you want to back up that location on your network so you don't lose anything, but that can be very useful for pulling all the data together.
Interesting. Okay.
All right. If we go to the summary tab, because we're a quote, it's asking me, do I want to recalculate the budgets? Because I could have made, 10 different changes on the screen as part of this. So what it's doing is that it's doing recalculating the budgets for all these items based on what I've got the inventory set up as. And so it did a cost roll up of all my materials into this material bucket. But then I can also see that for my design step, it's 125 hours. And that accounts for $9,375 worth of labor.
Okay.
Is what we're budgeting. We can revise the budget at any point in time. And once we turn it into an order, it will lock, or once we put costs against it, it will lock the original budget and you only have the revised budget to update. But then we'll be able to start seeing our actuals so that we can compare the two.
Okay.
You can do this on each and every step. And what I did on the other step, let's see, that's another billing one. So then on this step, what I did for the parts is I put all our sub-assemblies on here, all the things that we're going to make. And again, you can use the PO box and you're not buying it, but that will link your job to this job. Okay. So when you close out the other job, it'll automatically be issued into this job. But if they're common sub-assemblies where you need it for 5 different machines, you may not want to do it one for one. You may want to make them all in one job, put them into stock, and then issue them out to the other job. So I did a little bit of both on within this.
Okay.
So we have both scenarios. Any questions so far?
Yeah, so let's go back to the first step where we see the commercial parts that we either have to buy or we are checking stock.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So just between looking at the first two, is that telling me that I have something in stock and that I don't need to purchase it?
All this is showing, until you highlight it, all you can see is your quantity required. You have no idea on your quantities needed until you highlight it. Once you highlight it, you can see what you currently have in stock, what you have available based on all your unfulfilled orders, and any expected receipts.
Okay, so then for this item, since it's in stock, what is the process here to move it from my stock inventory to WIP?
Well, first off, we're in a quote, so we wouldn't be doing that yet. Once
okay.
You're jumping ahead on me.
All right, sorry.
So once we turn it to an order,
Yeah.
you can literally put a 1 here and it'll issue it into WIP. Or you can use the parts usage and issue all the parts for this step. Or you can do it within there's a thing called Time Tracker, which is where that's part of the base module, but it will allow you to capture the labor for that particular step and issue all the parts that are needed. So it really kind of depends where in the process you are as far as how you're going to want to issue them.
Okay, makes sense. I saw the parts usage part of the demo on the last OM module that Brian sent me. But yeah, I follow you there. So I'll let you keep going because you see what happens when I start to ask questions. We start to.
You're fine. Believe me, it makes it much more fun if you do ask questions.
Okay.
All right, so we can go ahead and accept it, and it updates everything. We can go into the work ticket summary and see our revenue, the labor costs, the inventory costs, and this is for the whole job. And if you wanted to use it as part of the quoting tool, you can also do a price adjust from here, and you can decide if you want a profit or a markup percent.
Okay.
So if we wanted a profit percent and we wanted 60% profit and we wanted $100 rounding factor, just to make it an even number, then it would adjust our price to $109,000 instead of the 95 to achieve that 60% profitability. So when I click proceed, it will update our per unit price accordingly. So now if we went back to the sales order, it would now update that.
I see. That's great.
So I'm going to go ahead and zero that out again and put our 28.5. Yeah, I hate decimal sometimes. Always forget to press my decimal point. All right, so if we go ahead and accept this quote, it's now in our system. So if we go back into it, we've got our quote for more noodles with that total $95,000. We can go ahead and print it out. And be much easier if I just click the other button, but I never remembered to do that. All right, so now we've got our auto sleever with our different payments.
Yep, that's
the
great.
Total revenue, 95. And depending on how you want to present this, you can do things like in Crystal where you can, do a sum on all this and it shows up here on this line instead. I mean, that's a Crystal formula that you can put in there so that, and then you can suppress these lines. It depends on how you want to do it and how you want them to see it. So you can pretty much make this however you want the customers to see it.
Fantastic.
All right. So now if we go ahead and go back in there and we can turn it into an order. One of the things that we didn't talk about the other day was what you guys are doing right now for scheduling or what you want to do going forward.
Yeah, I saw this part in the other module, and I sort of want to avoid it.
Okay, that's fine too.
Well, I don't. How do I put this? We run very lean, and we have two project managers that are responsible for controlling that shop activity, and they manage their own calendar right now. And the last thing I want to do is interrupt their improvements, which they've been having a lot of over the last couple months. So that's one thing maybe like down the road that we could start incorporating into the system. But at this point, that was one thing that I sort of wanted to avoid.
Okay, that's fine. How do you guys determine what the date, what your promise date is for when you'll provide the equipment when you take an order?
Yeah, so the purchase order, well, the proposal actually has a delivery time, and it's usually, I think, anywhere between 28 weeks to like 30 weeks, or 28 weeks to 34 weeks. So we give a range, and then depending on progress throughout the job, that sort of becomes a moving target.
Okay. When you create your order, literally all you have to do is change the drop down to a standard order,
Okay.
and then decide what date you want to put in here
Okay.
for your ship date. So, we'll just say 12/1 just for giggles.
Okay.
When you accept it, it's now going to promote it to a standard order. And now everything in there is going to have demand against it. So if we go back to our work ticket, it's going to have everything that we had before. So if we go into the billing, we're now going to be able to go and say, okay, we got the order. We want to release it.
Mm-hmm.
A quantity of 1. Why do I do this? Oh, I've got to actually accept the fact that I promoted it before it's going to acknowledge me. All right, let's go back in for a second. 1725. So for our step 10, if we go to the parts, we can now say that we're going to use one of these and we're going to release it for billing. And now when you go out and bill or invoice this particular sales order / work ticket, this will come up as a line item that's available to be billed.
Okay.
When you bill it, it will, I'm guessing you guys went through the approval or the billing process before. You can see that it's turned green because it's billed. Once it's gone through the billing process, it'll turn red so that you know that it's already been invoiced. Let's grab this one. So that one went through the invoicing process already. So if I go out to the work ticket, what's going to show in here is that for step 10, if I go to the parts, by default, it's going for the unbilled. So we don't see it. If we look for all of them, you can see now that it's no longer released, that it's billed.
Okay. How did that happen? So like, how do I see the invoice action?
If we go ahead and go over to AR invoicing, give me a second because I didn't put that shortcut in there. Invoice data entry. Grab our batch, accept invoice.
So if you have an invoice template,
sorry, it's not an AR invoice. What am I doing? It's sales order invoice. Cancel. So what was your question? Sorry. Why?
So if you essentially have a invoice template set up for your machines, that work ticket is going to push an invoice into the actual accounting module now.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. So when I come to the lines, we're not billing it complete, but there's other billable lines. So do you want to do it? And when we say yes, it's going to show up with that one with the dollar amount.
I see. Okay.
And then you just run it through your dailies like you do every other thing, every other kind of invoice.
Okay.
So it'll automatically pull it over because of the way it's set up on the work ticket.
Yep. Yeah, that's perfect.
Right, so we'll just accept that and let it sit out there. All right, so if we go back to our work ticket, oh, I know, 17.5-1. Are you not going to let me do that because I have it in invoicing now? Let me just delete that invoice for the time being. Otherwise, we could just run through the dailies quick, but do you know what I mean with the dailies and all that?
No. No.
No. Okay. When you do an invoice, when it's every day, you'd probably be going through and running your daily sales reports and updates,
Oh, okay.
and it would automatically update the information. So let's quick run this, and then you can see that the 28.5 is the only thing that's out there that's being invoiced because, you know, I'm kind of lazy. I haven't done everything.
That's okay. This is great. Now I follow what you're saying.
And we can go ahead and do the work ticket report. And it's going to show you the different accounts
Mm-hmm.
that it's going to hit based on the deferred revenue and WIP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then if you have commission to be paid, it's going to show your gross profit with taking the commission off there.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, we can do the back order report. And some of the stuff you wouldn't necessarily need to take a look at because obviously you know that you're just doing the initial billing and work hasn't been started on this.
Right.
So, but you'd be running through and looking at all the other stuff for the other invoices that you're processing anyhow.
Yeah. Right, because we do a handful of spare part sales orders every day, and then fulfilling, I don't know, 20 to 50 of those a month. That's great.
So now when we go back into our step 10 on this and go to the parts, again, it's going to be empty because it's already been billed. And now we can see the billable that it's been billed versus released. So the
Okay.
released is what triggers it to be available, and using up the quantity and releasing it makes it available to bill in invoicing.
Okay.
And then they'd be, you know, you'd be able to see on here that that the invoice has been completed when you come back in, and you can't see it and it's now been billed. All right. So
Can I
one of the
ask
things that you could
general
go ahead.
question? So
Mhm.
when you created that invoice, did it stop you from continuing to add activity on the sales order?
It said that this is currently in invoicing. If you do it through, you can't do, you can look at it and do some of the other stuff on it, but where I was going would directly conflict with the invoice. So it doesn't let you into the screen because you can't change anything.
Okay.
So you'd have to go in through inquiry to be able to see it. And I was going in through edit.
Okay.
So it wouldn't let me. One of the other things that I missed the first time through is there's also statuses, and there's a status on each and every step. So in our case, once the invoice is done, or if we assume that we've received payment, we could go ahead and change our status to complete, received payment, and that will automatically change our status. So if we go out and come back in, we're now going to be at the completed status. It's going to say who did it and what time they did it and
Yep.
what date they did it. And these statuses, if we go back in here for a second, there's only like 2 of them that are set up out of the box. I think new and complete are the only 2 that are set up when you first install it. You decide what the other statuses are and create it. You can also have different things associated with it. And what I mean by that is whether or not you want to put parts on hold based on that status so that they can't be purchased or something like that. You can control by the status code as well.
Okay, that's interesting.
All right. So now we've got our new status. We're now actually ready to work on this job.
Okay.
If we need to buy parts for it, there's the module called Component Exception Manager. And this is a material planner. And it's once we generate our list, we'll have a list of items that need to be purchased and a list of items that need to be made. And then we can go into those lists and perform the purchases or creation of work tickets. But before we even get there, you can plan by work tickets, which are going to just take into account all the demands for your work tickets, or you can do it by inventory item. And if you do it by inventory item, it does all your work tickets as well as any minimum stock levels that you're going to need. You can do it over a specific time frame. So if you want to just look between now and the end of the month, you can do that. If we use a cutoff date, you can also include the lead times. And what that means is if we had the cutoff date at the end of the month, but we had an item that was needed the middle of June or July, and it had a 4-week lead time. It would be included in the list if I have this checked because it's needing to be purchased between now and the end of the month. But if I took that checkbox off, it wouldn't include it in the list because it's not needed until next month.
Okay.
So it just gives you a little bit more flexibility in what you're looking for. Depending on what you plan by, you're going to have different filters that you can use for the information that you want to actually isolate down. I'm going to do it for everything because I don't have a huge data set here.
Yep.
But once you have all the information, if I click continue, these buttons are now active. When I go into it, we've now got a bunch of other filters that we can use to look at slice and dice the information on the screen instead of in the previous screen when you're generating it. So we've got all our different items that it says we need to purchase. If I highlight any of them, you can drill into the details of why it created the suggestion. And in this case, I've got one that's being bought direct to the job. All the rest of the jobs are pulling it out of stock. I've got 22 on hand. I've got a minimum stock level of 8. So it's saying, oh, based on the math here, you need to buy more. You need 3 more because of the minimum stock level. But if you look up here, it says we're supposed to purchase 20. And the reason for that, you can see on the other screen where we've got a minimum order quantity set up of 20. And it also has a time phase version of when the demand's happening. So we've got 22 today. We have one job that has one that doesn't have a date on it, and then all these old ones that needed a bunch of other ones.
I see.
So it'll tell you what you need to purchase and when you need to purchase it to make sure you're meeting all your demands. And this will all take into account the lead time on those items within your inventory maintenance.
Okay. Yeah, that's great.
So then the screen, you can look at all the items depending on how you want to look at them. You can look at them by, a specific vendor. You can look at them by a work order. if we go back to the work ticket and go to our work ticket, we can refresh the data, and these are the ones that we need to purchase for our work ticket that we just created. So you can see the information about the quantity to buy, required quantity to buy, purchase quantity, quantity that you have on hand. So in these particular cases, the checkbox was checked, but we have quantity on hand.
Right.
So maybe we want to go into that one and say, you know what? We don't need to buy that one. We're going to pull it from stock.
Okay.
And then it will update that on the work ticket. So you can pick and choose what you want to purchase and whether or not you want to purchase it or if you want to pull it from on hand. I don't know if you guys have them on hand typically or not, but it's an option.
Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't.
Right. And this would make sure that you had enough of all of them. For the ones that you make sure, or that you know, one of the other ways that I think is really useful to look at it is by vendor. So you can say that you want to look at it by vendor and refresh the data, and it's going to show you everything you need to buy from that vendor.
Yep.
If they can't provide it in any of these screens, you can go into the vendor list, switch it over to a different vendor, and it shows up in their list.
Okay.
If you negotiate a better price, you can go ahead and update that unit cost before you actually create your purchase order. If the vendor says you're close to a volume discount or free freight or something like that, you can take a look at all the items that you buy from that vendor and decide whether or not you want to purchase additional product. And if you do, you can go ahead and add that quantity in here to get those discounts.
Okay.
And then it will show up in the list of items that we're going to buy. Once everything's ready, all you have to do is click the Create PO. You can create a brand new PO, add to an existing new PO, or add to a hold PO. I'm just going to create a new one, and it created 3 lines for my 2 items. And when I click Continue, this information is going to disappear because it's a virtual to-do list, and I've created the purchase order. So it's taking it off the list for me.
Okay.
And then I can move on to the next stuff that I want to purchase.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
So in this case, I'll just go ahead and let's see. Put that one on hold, that one on hold, that one on hold, and that one on hold because we've got enough of those. So we need those 2. So I'm just going to go ahead and create the POs for those as well. And now that's done. And it's going to work very similarly on the manufacturing side. So if it's something that you need to make, it's going to show up in the list as to what you have on hand, if you have any. And because by default, you know, depending on how you set up the work ticket and what information you import into those parts, if you want it to be linked, it may try to link, or it may have it linked, and then you go, oh, we've already got 3 of those. I'm going to use one of the ones that we have instead of making another one. So it gives you all the information, and then literally you can put them all on hold and release them individually, or whatever you need to do. So we've got some on hand of those. So we'll just make these ones that we don't have any of. All right. So then we can click the Create Work Ticket, and it's going to work very similar, but it's going to go out and create those work tickets for us. And if these are custom items, it will just create the work ticket shell of that this work ticket's out there for this particular item. And then you're going to have to build what the work ticket is, or have a template out there that would create the process steps like we did at the beginning. And then maybe have to add the parts manually like we did on, you know, that we talked about on the auto sleever. It kind of depends on what information you have and where you want to store it.
Okay. Yeah, this is the element that I still need to think through.
But it can create those work tickets, at least the shells of them out there automatically. And
Mhm.
if you have a template for the if they all go through the typical same process steps, you could at least have a template with the process steps on it.
Okay.
So it, again, depends on how you guys want to do it. So then when we go out there, we're going to have all the work tickets out here under this 1726 for these different pieces. And actually, let's go back into 1725 for a second. So if we go to our parts, if it was ones that are being purchased that we actually created the purchase order for, which it doesn't look like there's any of them, you'll be able to see that. Let's go into the other one that I have some of the data in from earlier when I was running through this. So when you go into them, it's going to automatically show you the purchase order, and you can hyperlink over to that purchase order. And in this particular one, I've already received it. So you can see the required date and the received quantity.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go over and go into purchase order inquiry history, I think is where it takes you. But you can go directly over to the purchase order when it's a purchase order that hasn't been received yet. But even when it has been received, you'll be able to see all the information that this was bought from United Computers, etc.
Okay.
And if we go over to some of these, you're going to be able to see what work ticket it's being made for.
Mm.
So that link that I was talking about, that takes you between the two different jobs. And if you're buying, or if you're making it to stock, then you're going to be able to see, the normal stock quantities.
Okay.
So any questions on the material planning type end of things?
No, so right now it's set up as, and this is just preference how you set it up. So the design phase, you have essentially parts inside of it, but you can essentially do purchasing as the phase, and sort of design is strictly
Yep.
labor. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
definitely. Yeah, you can make whatever process steps that make sense to having.
Yeah.
I just kind of did it based on what
Mhm.
we had talked about and all that. But you could have a purchasing step, a design step in here, a purchasing step, a work ticket creation step for creating your subassemblies.
Mhm.
I mean, it's for controlling your workflow. So whatever things you want to try to control
Yeah.
through the process that makes sense, then yeah, you can definitely have the different process steps for doing it.
Mhm. Okay. So if you go into the design,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
and then you go to labor,
In this particular case, because this is the other work ticket that I was working with before, Sarah Danielson has put 9 hours against this particular step.
Mm-hmm. And
so
how
we can,
how does that make its way into the system?
that module that I was talking about with Time Tracker, there is multiple different ways that you can put the data in, whether it's a single employee has it up on their computer or out on the shop floor, multiple people are using it, or if
Uh-huh.
somebody's just using it to issue the parts, it's all the same program, it's just accessing it different ways.
So what if I'm the person that reviews all the time. I pull all the job hours by the different departments, and if I'm going to enter it, how would I do that?
Probably administrative time entry, which is
Okay.
going to look very similar. Um, you can choose a transaction date for when it happened, who
Mhm.
the employee is that did the work, what job they worked on. So let's grab our 1725-20. So we'll put it in. He's going to help design things, whatever time they started, whatever time they ended, the total time, or you can just do total time. It depends on what you want to capture.
Okay.
It's a setup option. You can add notes for what they did. You can mark the quantities complete through that process step or not track quantities complete, completely up to you.
Okay.
You can mark the step as complete. And if you mark the step as complete, then it's going to update that status code to complete.
I see.
You can also go into the parts usage at the same time. And for this particular work ticket, you can see all the different parts that are required. You can go ahead and auto issue them and have it automatically issue everything for our step 20. And to make life easy, which you guys would never do, I'm going to have it automatically issue the serial numbers. But it's saying, hey, for this thing, you don't have enough of them on hand. So I'm not going to issue it because there's a whole concept that's called dynamic inventory.
Okay.
Which means it's actually physically taking it out of inventory. Like when I said you could just put a 1 in there and it would take it out of inventory, it actually takes it out of inventory and puts it into WIP at that point in time. And because of the way it works, there's very few ways that you can go negative with your inventory with doing it this way.
Okay.
But it's saying, hey, there's none of these in stock. How can you actually use one? Go have somebody fix inventory to make sure that it's right. And it'll give you that for every one that it finds. So it issued all the parts for it, and now we have our labor for it. So if we go back into our job now, oh, come on. I was doing the step of the job. All right, so step 20. We go to the parts, we'll see that all our parts have been issued except for the ones that are marked to be bought on a PO.
Mm-hmm.
Or the ones that we don't have in stock. So which one was it that we didn't have in stock? Must be this one. Yeah. We have none of them in stock to be able to issue it.
Mm-hmm.
If we go to the labor, it's going to show us those 9 hours and the notes that I put in the work performed. And if you have rights to do so, you can take a look at the costs associated with those hours.
Oh, that's great.
If you go to the summary, you're going to be able to see that original budget's locked down. We've still got our revised budget if we need to. We've got our actuals and the variances based on those actuals for this particular step.
Mm-hmm.
If you have rights to do so, you can go into the profit analysis and you can see on that step, the budgeted costs, the current costs, and the projected costs based on the current costs and any projected variances. And you can look at it by step or by work ticket.
Okay.
And then in the case where you guys have 2 machines on the same sales order, you could then look at it by order. So it would combine both work tickets and you'd be able to see on that whole job, between those 2 machines, what your profitability is.
That's great. So, sorry, can you go back to labor? So you entered in. So what if? Um,
And one of the things too, before you go into that, you can print off the work ticket. And again, it's going to be a crystal form, but one of the things you can do is you can barcode it.
mhm.
And you could literally have a barcode reader sitting at your desk, plugged into your USB port. And you could scan, you could have a list of employees with their barcodes next to them. Scan the employees, scan the work ticket number
Mhm.
to make all that go quicker and easier as well. And eventually, if you guys wanted to, you could also go into having the employees do it with wireless barcode readers out on the floor and all that stuff too.
Yeah, our job cost system right now is they scan QR codes
Mhm.
throughout the different steps of the production process. But so if I'm entering the time, and typically what I do now, I accumulate it by the department. So while I have the detail behind the accumulation by employee, I would never enter it by specific employee because that would take me too much time. So
Mhm.
in this situation, would I basically rig it to put my department in as employees?
Probably. I think that would probably be the most expedient way to get to it.
Okay. Because this is built up by entering an individual employee number. I mean, I have departments and department numbers, so I guess that would just that would be like sort of the sync to make that work.
Right. And the employee number is divided the way I've got it set up by department and employee number. So you could just have it set up for,
General.
the design department, instead of having individual employees.
Yep. That's great. Yeah, I like it. So what was on the direct cost tab?
That's if you're doing like a direct purchase. I mean, a lot of times like outside services or an AP, a direct AP cost. I don't have anything in here.
Yeah, I see, like a travel expense or something.
Yeah, you could have that set up that you'd see that information and would go into the costs for the work ticket.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. This is fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, this is very similar to the module that Brian sent me before. So, but it's starting to ring home now. So, yeah, this is fantastic. I like it.
It's sinking in.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to grasp something watching a module for the first time. Sometimes people are moving extremely fast, and
Right.
you're seeing their mouse move around, and it clicks 5 different things. And
Exactly.
when you're talking and walking through it with your actual parts, it's a different sort of it's embedding a different sort of way.
Yeah, it really helps when you can see
Yeah.
your own data in there. Yeah.
Yeah. This is great. Okay.
Cool.
I guess a general question. So, I mean, I feel like I'm getting a lot of value out of this, and the reason why we were doing this is because I wanted to compare the OM versus not having it, and I guess it would be helpful if maybe like if Colby's watching this and he's seeing my reaction to it, does he think that not having it can do the same exact thing, or is it worth having this? Because that parts usage screen, and letting somebody who's in purchasing be able to review items in that manner, to me, I feel is very helpful. And you don't get that with just the regular modules, right?
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, I would. So, yeah, seeing your kind of oohs and ahs, I'm just like, I think we should show you the base Sage 100 again. I think it'll take about 10 minutes to show you, because, specific to what we're talking about here, Sage 100, just out of the box, the core modules just don't do as much. And so, I mean, if it's okay with you guys, rather than tell you a bunch of stuff, let's just show you again on the Sage 100 side. We try and be agnostic, meaning, our company in a situation like this, because we don't want you to feel like we're pushing you in one way, one direction or another.
Right.
That all being said, it's like seeing all the stuff you like with, with the operations management and production management stuff. My inclination is, if you like it, get it. And let's show you, we'll go through Sage 100 again, and it's going to be faster because there's a lot less to it. So, Brian, do you want to give me control so I can share my screen?
One more thing before we go there.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, go for it.
Vince, we had talked before, and I know it's a phase 2, but the other piece is the whole service piece.
Yeah.
And one of the things, even above and beyond the service dispatching and service agreements, is a thing called the equipment asset file. And once you sell and invoice an item, if it's serialized or if it's marked to do so, it will update to the equipment asset file. So if I go out here and take a look at one of the items that we have out here, you can see, you can automatically have it add your warranties for your parts and your labor. You can see who owns it. If you want, you can see your total revenue to date versus total cost to dates if you track your service costs to go with it. If you go to the transactions, you can see when you manufactured it versus when you serviced it, and you can drill directly into the invoices, which will drill directly into the work ticket. So if we go out through AR, we can go into the work ticket itself and see who worked on this when we made it initially. And we can see all that information that we have looked at a few different times over.
Yeah.
And then you can also have attachments that will automatically add to your service ticket when you create a new service ticket or a preventative maintenance ticket.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can see your actual service history, and it will divide it out between on-demand service and PM service.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes hand in hand with the other stuff. So I won't go into the other pieces of it, but I wanted you, this is in the base product, so.
It is. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So I wanted to make sure you knew that before we jumped over to standard Sage.
It definitely looks like something we could potentially use, but we just have to get our hands around the core accounting stuff first.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Just showing you the lights in the future.
Yeah, that's great.
Colby, you can take over if you need to.
All right.
I'll stop presenting and then you should be able to.
Okay, there we go. Okay, you guys see me okay?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this will go, I'm chuckling to myself. This is going to go quite a bit faster, showing you on the Sage 100 side, how things look. So Brian forwarded on this spreadsheet of, like the sample BOM and everything.
Yep.
And so I basically took that and put it into Sage 100 as best as I understood it, so maybe I may have grouped something slightly wrong, but hopefully the part numbers, customer names, et cetera, should at least look look accurate. So so for example, the one that you had sent over was for more noodles. So I've got the sales order screen open right now, but I'm going to say that based off of the spreadsheet you sent, that they're buying two things from you. One is a commercial part, one is a PMI part. I knew that the total invoice amount was 95,000, and so I just said, okay, well, one of those is 50K and the other is 45K. And so you're going through your sales process, you're in communication with the customer, you're taking all your notes and doing all your figures and stuff, and you determine, okay, based off of this configuration and what they want, et cetera, this is what we're going to charge them for, for this order, basically. So then at that part, you basically have told the system that you've got an ordered quantity for that. And in order to actually generate that item, then I've created this bill of material right here that's got a listing of all the different items that were part of that PMI part. And so I went through, you've got the quantities, part numbers, et cetera. They're basically just sitting there as raw material inventory. And then right here, you can see here's some of your labor items, for basically time or cost that's being added into that part or to that manufactured item. So I've added those in right there as well. And so that sits there basically as a bill in inventory. And remember on our last demo, we walked through, if you have an item number, then you can create a bill of material that basically matches that item number, which is what I did, so that's why I can add those on the sales orders, because they're actual part numbers in the system now.
Okay.
So to basically take this and get some quantity in so that you've got something to ship out right there on your sales order, that's when you would go through the production entry. And so this is essentially when you tell the system, you'd say, okay, I'm going to create, let's see, what was the name of that item? PMI. So this is where I'd say, well, I'm going to manufacture, one PMI part. You could do multiple. But then when I come to my lines tab, it basically does all the math and says, well, based off of manufacturing one of those, here's everything that's coming out of inventory. Here's basically my extended total that comes out. And it's going to create one item of this. So then I would go through and I'd post this entry in the system. I won't take you through the actual posting. I think it's, redundant or not really needed to illustrate. But once I basically post this entry, then what I'll have is I'll then have one PMI part now in stock.
Yep.
So I would come into the sales order and then proceed through the invoicing process, just this standard Sage 100 process to invoice this order. Now, in terms of taking the deposits, we had mentioned that a little bit earlier in this call.
Yeah.
So you'd be logging in, for example, using the add-on that we had mentioned. You could log multiple deposits in and say, okay, well, here's a 50%, here's a 40%, here's a 10%. The 50 and 40% generally, you just go straight to the AR module, or you could do that as sales order module as well. But you're basically creating an invoice and a line item, whatever the name of that line item code is, you're going to direct to like a prepaid deposits account. So it sits there on the GL saying, hey, well, we took in 4750, 47,500 or whatever for the 50% amount on this order. And then you'd also come into the sales order and say, well, on that payment, we've taken in 47,500. And then with the add-on that we talked about, you could add in multiple payments right here. So rather than just having one amount, you could say, well, then I got another wire for the 37,000 or whatever the amount is. But then we go against that net order remaining, so which would take you down to the 10% essentially. Then at the 10%, that's when you invoice the remainder. You ship it to the customer, invoice them for the remaining 10%. At the point that you invoice this sales order, then your inventory goes out. You recognize your cost, you recognize your revenue. That 10% goes to accounts receivable. The 90% that's already been paid would then hit the GL for the prepaid deposits account. And that's the basic gist of it. It's you get your sale amount, you come over to the BOM and say, okay, well, here's how we build it. Then you produce it using this as your template, essentially. which gives you the inventory then to ship it over back on the sales order side. So the main struggles, I would say, or the main downsides to this is that when it comes to the planning side of things, Sage 100 is more manual. You'd create custom reports, you'd create some custom processes to basically identify what you need to order, what you need to get into stock, what needs to be produced, where you're falling short, etc. But those would be a bunch of manual reports, and then you have to type those POs or whatever into Sage 100. So
you're limited because you don't have the full work ticket interface.
Yeah, I mean, there's several things on. I always want to call it job ops because that was the old name. But so the whatever it is, production management or operations management. I can never remember which one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's operations management now. Well,
operations
make to stock versions of it is production management. The old traditional job ops is operations management.
Okay, see, that's why I'm confused. So in any case, it just goes deeper, especially when you're doing make to order type stuff and you're needing to track inventory. It just goes farther and deeper directly in the software rather than trying to do it, more manually.
Right. Yep. I mean, this looks like it's going to be fantastic for us. This is fantastic. I just wish I could snap my fingers and be working in it tomorrow. But I understand the process. Okay, this is great. Stacy, there wasn't anything else you needed to show me, was there?
No. Just know that there's a way to, like those sub-assembly work tickets.
Mm-hmm.
There's a make to stock closing that will automatically close those work tickets when they're done.
Okay.
And the ones that are going directly to another work ticket, it will run it through stock and put it directly on the other work ticket. If you're making it to stock, it'll just put it into stock, and then you can issue it to the other work ticket as one of the parts that are needed as you go through the process. So, and I don't typically show that because it's just kind of a screen where it says, "What do you want to close out?" What did you do? So it's kind of like running through the journals and register in the updates.
Yeah.
It's good information to have, but in a demo, it's kind of mind-numbing.
Mm-hmm. Can you show me just really quickly how fast you're able to just pull up balance sheet P&L?
Yeah. So I think we talked about during our last demo that there's two variations of financial reporting within Sage 100. There's kind of the out-of-the-box, wizard-driven reporting, and then there's also Sage Intelligence.
Okay.
So I'm going to show you the fast one first of all, and then with the Sage Intelligence reporting, it's just more customized reporting where you can really kind of, rather than being wizard-driven, people tend to use it when they want to get customized reports, consolidated financial statements, departmentalized, getting really fancy with lots of calculations. But if I just use my basic financial reports, I'm going to show you how fast you can build a new one. So you have a wizard-driven tool. You give it a name. You say, well, what kind of income or what kind of, financial statement is this? And then it's going to ask you for what type of columns do you want included in there. So I'll say maybe actual and percent, actual and prior year. Combined statement, do you want to divide it out by segments of your chart of accounts?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to say, let's do this maybe by location, period to date, year to date, or both. So basically, it's just taking you through the high level, rounding. Do you want to show zero balance accounts? All that type of stuff. I'm just going to click through.
Yep.
And then once you create it once, then you're good to go. You can rerun it later on using a process faster than this. But you can see that in that 60 seconds or whatever, I created a departmentalized financial statement, period to date, year to date, 8 different columns across here, showing what's happened. And then because I did departmentalized, you're seeing that it's now doing for that segment right there, the O1, that it's now generating a different financial statement because I said I wanted to do departmentalized. I could just do it consolidated, but it just uses the system setups in terms of the account groupings and everything to generate these statements. And when you're done, now you've got a new one created.
This is just a general question. Is the sequencing of the chart of accounts, is there for Sage 100, is there a specific way they want the sequence, or is it flexible?
It's flexible, so
okay.
You can do it however. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So you can still come in, and you can see it asks for kind of like ranges of accounts, and so you can do categories and account types and all that type of stuff for your chart of accounts. But you can, some companies are really high level, and other ones get really, really detailed in terms of how many groupings they do. But it's all user defined. You can determine how you want to set it up.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, this is much more user friendly than Sage 50. Okay, that's great. Okay. I'm liking it. Okay, so what's next?
Well,
I think, or go ahead, Brian. You
I was
talk
going to
first.
say, you have 2 options. I'm going to kind of let you drive which way you're deciding.
Yeah.
'Cause that's going to be a difference in, both the software cost and, the scope of work.
Right. Okay. Is there any way, Brian, do you have time later this afternoon to discuss the quotes in more detail?
Unfortunately, I don't. If we're ending this call in the next, say, 5 to 10 minutes,
or do you want to?
I'm free up until 4 p.m. Eastern. Yes.
I mean, I'm open. I mean, I can talk about them right now. I'm just being courteous to. I don't know what the relationships are.
No. Perryman and Associates has a relationship with Stacy's firm, and I have a relationship with all 3 of them, so we're good there.
Oh, okay. I actually have the quote printed out in front of me.
Okay. If you need me to share my screen, I can pull it up.
Okay. It's just the professional services quote that Colby sent me. I believe it was early last week.
Okay. Let me see.
I can pull it up if we need, Brian. You're looking for a copy of it?
I just found it. Oh, since you're there and you're already sharing, I'll let you go ahead and drive.
Okay.
Yep, that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Okay, so in E2, this 20,000 here, is this implementation costs of it? What exactly is the 20,000?
Okay, sorry. I tried to explain that on our last call. So whatever this number is, whatever Brian gives you for the software. I didn't.
Oh,
I had a couple quotes prior, and so that's what you've already been showed from Brian in terms of,
yes.
are you getting Sage 100? Are you getting operations management? So I just
Yep.
threw a number in there, knowing that we would update it with whatever the final number ended up being.
Yes, understood. Okay, so the last one I have from Brian, it's Sage 100 concurrent users 10, and then at the bottom near the total, Sage OM 5 and 5 total is 22,750. Okay, so
Yeah,
then
so whatever that number is, that's what you just plug right there. I just trying to make it easier so you could see all your numbers in one place.
right. Okay, so makes sense to me.
Yep.
So Brian, just to follow up on that quote, so the roll sheet that I sent you, there were 15 unique potential users, right?
Right.
Now, the last quote you sent me, you said that the OM users have to be the same as the 100 users, right?
The same or less than, yes.
Same or less than. And your sheet basically has 10, right? So will this quote cover 15 unique users?
Well, I think in your sheet you didn't have anything over 10 in
No.
in 100 and anything over 10 in the operations side of it.
Right.
But there was some overlap that we had to account for. So 10 and 10 would be the number, specifically because I think we had at least 10 or the maximum of 10 in operation. So the 10 up on the 100 side had to match that.
Okay, I see.
Yep.
All right, let me make sure I will finalize that list today.
Okay.
And I will give you those numbers.
Okay.
And then Colby, on the professional services quote, can we knock down the 40 hours to 24 on the customization? And then
totally. We had just kind of thrown in a number, knowing that it may not be spent in any case, but yeah.
Yep.
I can resend this to you as a second version.
Okay, perfect. And then on the add-ons, so layering it out basically the way that Stacy had shown it, you wouldn't need the additional deposit fields, right?
I agree. Yeah.
Okay. And then multi-company general ledger, yes, we want that. Sage fixed assets. I want to. Fixed assets for us isn't really a big deal right now. I will just continue to use what we're doing. And then if it's something we want to layer on later, we can do that.
You may want to check. I'm not certain, Brian, you may have an answer to this, but with the Sage 50 Lite version of fixed assets, you may need to keep paying your Sage 50 annual renewal in order to keep access to the fixed assets. I'm not sure if there's a trigger in there that they shut it down if you stop paying your maintenance on it. So it may be cheaper. I don't know what you're paying for Sage 50 right now, and I don't know if Sage 50 or fixed assets gets shut down. If you're not paying your annual maintenance on it.
Yeah, they're two separate subscriptions.
Yeah.
So you still need to run them all in tandem until you go live in 100, and then we can kill the 50 subscription. And if you're going to keep and hang on to Lite and use that as a standalone, you'll have the 100 subscription and the Lite fixed asset subscription.
Okay, so Lite could still stand on its own.
It could, yeah.
Okay. So let me just check to figure out what we pay for Lite, because I mean, if it's close to what this would cost, then it's probably a no-brainer just to switch.
Well, one thing, so Sage fixed assets with the standard version, it allows you to integrate into Sage 100, so you can import depreciation entries in, which is a small thing if you're not doing that much. You know,
Yeah.
if it's pretty minor, then it's who cares.
Right.
But if you are wanting to automate and then get above that 1,000 limit, you know, if either of those are important to you, then yeah, getting the standard version, it just doesn't hurt. And plus, it becomes a networked version where 2 or 3 people can log into it. You
Yeah.
just have one license, so it's one concurrent license, but you can have it installed on several machines.
Yeah. Okay, let me look into the light stuff. And then I'll follow up on that point. But okay, this is fantastic because I would really like to move forward with the OM and get this focused and transitioned, and hopefully next year will be much more smooth.
I hear you.
Hey,
Okay.
anything is going to be smoother than 2020 is my vote.
Yeah, you're right about that. Okay, great. So, Brian, I will follow up with you on the light matter and the roles matter, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Stacy, for turning that around so fast.
No problem.
All right,
You have a
great.
good day.
You too. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.